The diner's neon sign buzzed and flickered in the darkness, casting pink and blue shadows across the empty parking lot. It was 2 in the morning and Rachel Martinez was so tired she could barely see straight. She'd been on her feet for 14 hours, serving coffee and stale pie to truckers and insomniacs who wandered in from the highway. Her back ached, her feet screamed, and she had exactly $43 in her bank account until Friday. She was wiping down the last booth when the door chimed. Rachel looked up, ready to tell whoever it was that the kitchen was closed, and froze. The man who entered wasn't just tall. He was massive, nearly 7 feet, with shoulders that barely fit through the doorframe. He wore a dark cloak that pooled around his feet, and there was something about the way he moved that made Rachel's instincts scream danger. But it was his eyes that caught her. They were gold, literally gold, like someone had poured molten metal into his skull. And they were filled with the kind of exhaustion Rachel knew all too well. The bone-deep tiredness of someone who'd run out of options. He sat in the corner booth without a word, moving carefully like he was carrying something fragile. Rachel grabbed the coffee pot, mostly because it gave her something to do with her shaking hands, and walked over. "Just coffee," he said. His voice was deep, rumbling like distant thunder before a storm. Rachel nodded and started to pour, but then she saw it. Movement under his cloak. Something alive. She opened her mouth to tell him pets weren't allowed, but the words died in her throat as a creature tumbled out onto the table. It was a dragon. An actual, honest-to-God dragon no bigger than a house cat. Its scales shimmered like opals, shifting colors in the fluorescent light. One wing spread out perfectly, delicate as stained glass. The other hung at a sickening angle, twisted and broken, the bones clearly wrong beneath the membrane. The baby dragon chirped, a sound like wind chimes breaking, and tried to stand. It fell over, the bad wing crumpling beneath it. Rachel should have screamed. Should have run. Should have called someone, anyone. Instead, she set down the coffee pot and knelt beside the table, getting eye level with the creature. The dragon looked at her with eyes too intelligent, too aware, and Rachel saw something she recognized instantly. Fear. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone could help. "Please don't call the authorities," the man whispered, and Rachel realized those golden eyes were filled with tears. "She's all I have left." Rachel had spent 2 years in physical therapy school before everything fell apart. Before her father's stroke. Before the medical bills that ate through their savings like acid. Before she dropped out to work double shifts and watch her dad deteriorate in a care facility that smelled like bleach and broken dreams. She knew injured bodies. She knew what broken looked like. And she knew, looking at this dragon's wing, that it wasn't hopeless. "Can I touch her?" Rachel asked softly. The man nodded, watching her like she might hurt his baby. Rachel extended her hand slowly, letting the dragon sniff her fingers. The creature's nose was warm, like touching sun-heated stone. After a moment, the dragon pressed into her palm, and Rachel felt her heart break a little. She examined the wing with gentle, practiced hands. The dragon whimpered but didn't pull away. Rachel traced the joint, felt where the bones had healed wrong, noticed how the muscles had compensated. It was bad. But not unfixable. "This isn't hopeless," Rachel said, looking up at the man. "It's like a severe rotator cuff injury. The bones healed incorrectly, and the muscles are all twisted up trying to compensate. She needs physical therapy, not surgery. Gentle stretching, strengthening exercises, maybe some heat treatment." The man stared at her like she'd just spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. "You think she can heal?" "I think she can improve. Maybe even fly, though it'll take time and work." Rachel stroked the dragon's head, feeling the small creature lean into her touch. "What's her name?" "Shimmer," the man said, his voice cracking. "Her name is Shimmer." He took a shaky breath, and Rachel watched this enormous, dangerous-looking man try not to fall apart in her diner at 2 in the morning. "I am Emperor Vorthanes," he said. "I rule 12-star systems and command billions of subjects. In my world, physical defects mean execution. My advisors want Shimmer removed. They say she weakens my bloodline, makes me look soft." Rachel felt anger spike through her exhaustion. "They want you to kill your own kid because she's disabled?" "I've searched 12 planets for a cure," Vorthanes continued. "Dragon medicine is the most advanced in 7 galaxies, but they all say the same thing. She'll never fly. She'll never be whole. The kindest thing is to end her suffering." His hand trembled as he stroked Shimmer's good wing. "You're my last hope. I found your planet by accident, and this diner was the only light I saw." Rachel looked at the dragon, then at the Emperor, then at the eviction notice crumpled in her apron pocket. She had $300 in overdue bills, a landlord who'd stopped returning her calls, and a boss who'd threatened to fire her twice this week for being too slow. She was barely surviving. She had no business taking on anyone else's problems. Shimmer chirped again and reached toward Rachel with her good wing, tiny claws extending like a kitten asking to be held. "I'll help," Rachel heard herself say. Vorthanes looked stunned. "What do you want in return?" "I can give you gold, technology beyond your civilization's understanding, territory on any world you choose." Rachel thought about her empty apartment, her dead-end job, her abandoned dreams. She thought about her father, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide for her, who died in a care facility because their insurance ran out. She thought about every time someone had looked at him after the stroke and seen a burden instead of a person. "I don't want your gold," she said quietly. "I want Shimmer to have what my dad never got. A real chance. Someone who doesn't give up on her." She met the Emperor's golden eyes. "Can you come back tomorrow night? Same time? I'll set up a space in the back room and we'll start therapy." Vorthanes gathered Shimmer carefully, tucking her against his chest. The baby dragon chirped and kept her eyes on Rachel, like she was afraid to lose sight of her. "Why?" Vorthanes asked, and Rachel could hear genuine confusion in his voice. "You gain nothing from this." Rachel smiled tiredly. "Sometimes people just need help. That's reason enough." As the Emperor walked toward the door, Shimmer twisted in his arms and reached one small wing toward Rachel. The gesture was so achingly hopeful that Rachel felt tears sting her eyes. After they left, Rachel stood alone in the empty diner, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. She had no money, no resources, and no idea if dragon anatomy even worked like human anatomy. But she'd seen Shimmer's eyes. She'd felt that small creature's desperate hope. And for the first time since her father died, Rachel felt like maybe she could make a difference. Even if it was just for one broken little dragon who deserved a chance to fly. She locked up the diner, drove home to her tiny apartment, and started pulling out her old textbooks from physical therapy school. Tomorrow night they'd begin. Tomorrow night, she'd prove that different didn't mean hopeless. Rachel cleared out the diner's storage room at 11:30 the next night, shoving boxes of napkins and ketchup packets into corners. She set up her old heating lamp from when she used to have a desk, the one she'd used for studying before everything went wrong. She arranged towels on the floor and pulled out diagrams from her physical therapy textbook, the pages yellowed and coffee-stained from years of use. When Vorthanes arrived at midnight, he had to duck through the back door. Shimmer was tucked carefully against his chest, wrapped in what looked like silk made from starlight. The baby dragon peeked out, saw Rachel and chirped excitedly. "Hey there, sweetheart," Rachel said softly, holding out her hands. Shimmer scrambled toward her, and Vorthanes looked startled when his daughter abandoned him completely for this human. Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor and gently positioned Shimmer under the heating lamp. The dragon's scales caught the warmth and shimmered even brighter. Rachel began with simple assessments, carefully extending the injured wing while watching Shimmer's face for signs of pain. "We're going to start very slow," Rachel explained, more for Vorthanes than the dragon. 5 gentle stretches twice a day. I'm not trying to force anything. I'm teaching her body to remember what healthy movement feels like. Right now, all these muscles know is compensation and pain. We need to show them something different." She demonstrated the first stretch, supporting Shimmer's wing at the joint and extending it maybe half an inch beyond where it naturally wanted to rest. Shimmer whimpered and Rachel immediately eased off. "I know, baby. I know it hurts, but we're going to go slow, okay? You tell me when it's too much." Vorthanes watched in complete silence. In dragon culture, pain was meant to build character. Hatchlings who couldn't endure rigorous training were considered weak. He'd never seen anyone treat injury with such careful gentleness. "You apologize to her," he said, confused, "for causing pain during treatment." "Of course I do," Rachel said, guiding Shimmer through another careful stretch. "Pain isn't punishment. It's information. Her body's telling us what it can handle. We listen." She smiled as Shimmer completed the repetition without whimpering. "Good girl. That was perfect." The baby dragon preened at the praise, and Rachel rewarded her with gentle scratches behind her head ridges. Vorthanes realized his daughter was trying harder for praise than she'd ever tried under threat of discipline. They fell into a routine. Every night at midnight, the Emperor of 12 star systems would sneak into a rundown diner on a backwater planet, and a broke waitress would teach his disabled daughter how to heal. Rachel tracked every millimeter of progress in a battered notebook. 1 degree of extension. 2 degrees. Shimmer holding a stretch for 5 seconds without trembling. "Why did you become a waitress?" Vorthanes asked on their 5th night. You clearly have medical knowledge. Rachel's hands never stopped their gentle work on Shimmer's wing. My dad had a massive stroke 2 years ago. He was a construction worker, no health insurance. The bills started coming in and they just never stopped. I was in my second year of physical therapy school, but I had to drop out. Started working doubles at the diner to pay for his care facility. She guided Shimmer through another stretch, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. He died 6 months ago. I'm still paying off his bills. Probably will be for the next 5 years. You sacrificed your future for him, Vorthani said quietly. Rachel looked up at him and her smile was sad but genuine. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. That's what you do for people you love. You show up. You keep showing up even when it's hard. The concept bothered Vorthani's more than he wanted to admit. He'd conquered his way to the throne specifically to end his father's brutal reign. His father had believed that strength came from cruelty, that mercy was weakness. Vorthani's had killed him in single combat and taken the crown, swearing he'd be different. But the system hadn't changed. The Empire still valued dominance over compassion. When Shimmer was born with her twisted wing, his advisors had handed him the ceremonial blade and expected him to do his duty. He'd fled instead, stealing his own daughter in the night and running across the galaxy. Now he watched this human who had nothing choose kindness anyway, and he didn't understand it. By the second week, complications arrived. General Cross sent another encrypted message. The military council was asking questions. Vorthani's had been gone nearly 3 weeks, which was unprecedented. There were whispers of a challenge to his throne. He needed to return soon or risk losing everything. Rachel noticed he was distracted during therapy. What's wrong? I must return home soon, he admitted. My absence raises suspicions. But Shimmer's therapy isn't complete. If we stop now, then we work harder, Rachel said immediately. She'd been sleeping maybe 3 hours a night, running on coffee and stubborn determination. Her boss Tony had pulled her aside twice, worried about how exhausted she looked. Yesterday she'd nearly passed out during the lunch rush. She hadn't told Vorthani's about the final eviction notice that came 2 days ago, or that she'd been skipping meals to afford the medical supplies Shimmer needed. Heating pads, support braces, therapeutic oils that helped with muscle flexibility. None of it was expensive by Dragon Emperor standards, but on a waitress salary it added up fast. Can you do 3 sessions a day instead of 2? Rachel asked. Morning, evening, and midnight? It'll accelerate her progress. That would require you to miss work, Vorthani's pointed out. Rachel shrugged. I'll figure it out. She didn't tell him that Tony had already threatened to fire her if she missed another shift, or that her car was making a horrible grinding noise she couldn't afford to fix, or that she'd been stealing food from the diner just to eat. During their 3rd week, something incredible happened. Shimmer completed her full range of stretches without a single whimper. Then tentatively she flapped both wings together. The movement was uneven and clumsy, but both wings moved in sync. Rachel gasped. Vorthani shot to his feet. And Shimmer, realizing what she'd done, chirped in absolute delight and flapped again. Oh my God, Rachel whispered. Baby, you did it. You actually did it. She hugged the dragon, tears streaming down her face. Shimmer wiggled happily, flapping her mismatched wings and climbing all over Rachel like an excited puppy. The baby dragon had gone from barely able to extend her injured wing to coordinated movement in 3 weeks. Vorthani's made a sound Rachel had never heard before. It was raw and broken, somewhere between a sob and a roar. He knelt beside them, and Rachel suddenly found herself hugging a crying dragon emperor while his daughter celebrated between them. Thank you, he said in his native language, words that roughly translated to keeper of hope, bringer of light. Thank you for seeing her when everyone else saw only brokenness. Rachel held them both, this impossible family that had crashed into her life and given her purpose again. She'd lost her father, lost her future, lost almost everything. But right now, holding this baby dragon who'd learned to move her wing again, she felt like maybe she'd found something too. The moment shattered when Tony burst through the storage room door without knocking. He froze, staring at the dragon, the Emperor, and Rachel. Rachel, He trailed off, then seemed to remember why he'd come. He held out an envelope. This came for you at the diner. It's from your landlord. Rachel's stomach dropped. She took the envelope with shaking hands and opened it. Final eviction notice. She had 1 week to pay 3 months of back rent or she'd be out on the street. Tony left quietly and Rachel just stood there, staring at the paper. She'd been so focused on saving Shimmer that she'd let her own life fall apart completely. Vorthani saw the notice, saw the despair on Rachel's face, and finally understood the full cost of what this human had done. She hadn't just helped his daughter. She'd sacrificed everything she had left. Her job, her home, her future. All for a creature that wasn't even her own species. Rachel, he started. It's fine, she said quickly, wiping her eyes. We've got one more week of intensive therapy. Let's make it count. But it wasn't fine and they both knew it. Rachel woke up to pounding on her apartment door. She stumbled out of bed, disoriented and exhausted after only 2 hours of sleep. When she opened the door, Vorthani stood there in full daylight, not even trying to hide what he was. He carried a chest that hummed with energy. You need to take this, he said, pushing past her into the tiny studio apartment. He set the chest on her wobbly kitchen table and opened it. Golden light spilled out and Rachel's eyes went wide. The chest was filled with actual gold coins, gemstones that sparkled like captured stars, and crystallized energy that pulsed with its own heartbeat. That's enough to buy this entire city block, Vorthani said. Take it. Use it. I cannot allow you to suffer for helping us. Rachel stared at the fortune. It would solve everything. Pay her rent, her father's medical bills, buy her a new car, get her back into school. She could have the life she'd lost. Her hand reached toward a coin, fingers trembling. Then she pulled back and closed the chest. No, she said quietly. Vorthani's looked genuinely confused. No? Rachel, you face homelessness. You've given everything to help Shimmer. This solves all your problems. I'm not doing this for money. Rachel pushed the chest back toward him. I'm helping because Shimmer deserves a chance. Because you're a father trying to save his kid. That's not something you pay someone for. The Emperor stared at her like she was speaking another language. In dragon culture, every single action required compensation. Debts had to balance. Favors were currency. Honor demanded equivalent exchange. The idea of helping someone and expecting nothing in return didn't just seem strange to him. It seemed impossible. What's your angle? He demanded. Everyone wants something. Power, status, wealth, favors. What do you really want from this? Rachel laughed and it came out bitter and tired. You want to know what I want? I want a world where kids don't get killed for being different. I want parents who don't have to choose between medicine and rent. I want people to stop acting like disabled lives are worth less than perfect ones. She sat down heavily on her sagging couch. I want my dad back, but I can't have that. So I'll settle for making sure Shimmer gets what he never did. A real chance to thrive, not just survive. People who see her as valuable exactly as she is. Vorthani studied her, this stubborn human who refused a fortune. My empire spans 12 star systems. I command billions. I have technology your world won't develop for 1,000 years. Yet you refuse my wealth? Your empire also wanted Shimmer dead for having a bent wing, Rachel shot back. Maybe the problem isn't the wing. Maybe it's the empire. The words hit Vorthani's like a physical blow. He sat down across from her, the cheap couch groaning under his weight. He'd spent 300 years building and maintaining an empire founded on one principle: strength through dominance. Weakness meant death. Compassion was leverage. Power was the only currency that mattered. But he'd watched Shimmer glide across the storage room the previous night, her wings uneven and awkward, her flight path wobbly and strange. She'd never fly like purebred dragons. She'd always struggle with things that came naturally to others. She'd need special accommodations and extra support. But she flew. Dragon medicine, the most advanced in 7 galaxies, had declared it impossible. This broke human with her second-hand textbooks and gentle hands had made it happen. You're asking me to change an entire civilization's values, he said quietly. I'm saying you already started. Rachel gestured toward where Shimmer was probably sleeping in the diner's storage room. You chose her over your throne. You ran across the galaxy to save her. That's already revolutionary. Vorthani's thought about his advisors, the ones who'd handed him the ceremonial blade. About the military council that saw compassion as corruption. About the hundreds of disabled hatchlings executed every year because perfection was the only acceptable standard. If I return and try to change these laws, there will be war, he said. Dragons who've built their power on the current system will fight to maintain it. Thousands will die. And how many die under your current system? Rachel asked softly. How many Shimmers get killed before they ever get a chance? How many parents have to choose between their child and their throne? That night at the diner, Rachel collapsed during therapy. She'd been standing, guiding Shimmer through wing exercises, when her vision went dark at the edges. She swayed, and the last thing she remembered was Vorthani's catching her before she hit the floor. She woke up on the storage room cot, covered with Vorthani's starlight cloak. Shimmer was curled up against her side, radiating warmth. The Emperor sat on the floor beside them, and Rachel realized with shock that he was cooking something on a portable heating unit. "What are you doing?" she asked groggily. "Making you food," he said simply. "When did you last eat?" Rachel tried to remember and couldn't. "I don't know. Yesterday? Maybe the day before?" Vorthani's made a sound like grinding rocks. "You've been skipping meals to buy Shimmer's medical supplies. They're expensive," Rachel defended weakly. "You're dying to save her." He handed her a bowl of something that smelled incredible. That's not a request." Rachel was too tired to argue. The food was strange, nothing like Earth cuisine, but it was warm and filling, and she nearly cried at how good it felt to have something in her stomach. Vorthani's watched her eat with an expression she couldn't quite read. "In my empire," he said quietly, "the strong provide for the weak out of duty. It's transactional. You feed your subjects so they'll fight for you. You heal your warriors so they'll win battles. Everything has a price, a purpose, a return on investment." He looked at Shimmer, still sleeping peacefully against Rachel's side. "But you're not strong. You have no army, no wealth, no power. By every metric my civilization values, you're worthless. Yet you gave everything for a child who can never repay you. You expected nothing. You just helped because she needed help." Rachel set down the empty bowl. "That's what people do. Or what they should do anyway." "No," Vorthani said firmly. "That's what humans do. And it's the most powerful thing I've ever witnessed." For the first time in his long reign, the Emperor served someone else. He made Rachel rest while he cleaned up the storage room. He contacted General Cross and arranged for medical supplies to be delivered directly, so Rachel would stop spending her non-existent money. He stood guard while she slept, this human who'd shown him what real strength looked like. When Rachel woke hours later, she was embarrassed and apologetic. She tried to get up to get back to work, but Vorthani's gently pushed her back down. "You taught me to care for the broken," he said softly. "Let me practice." The moment of peace shattered like glass. The storage room door exploded inward, and General Cross materialized with 50 Imperial guards surrounding the building. His eyes found Shimmer immediately, and Rachel saw his hand move toward the weapon at his side. "My lord," Cross said, his voice cold and dangerous. "You're needed at home. Commander Vexenaire has challenged for your throne." His eyes never left Shimmer. "And this defect cannot be allowed to leave this planet alive. The law is clear." Rachel grabbed the nearest thing she could reach, which happened to be the coffee pot, and stepped between Cross and Shimmer. The baby dragon woke up, saw the armed soldiers, and whimpered in fear. "You touch her," Rachel said, her voice shaking but fierce, "and I don't care how many star systems you command. I will end you." Cross looked at this tiny human threatening him with a coffee pot and laughed. "You're nothing. Fragile. Meaningless." "She's under my protection," Vorthani's growled, moving to stand beside Rachel. But Cross didn't back down. "You've lost your mind, my lord. This human has poisoned your judgment. The law states that defective heirs must be eliminated. Showing mercy proves you're unfit to rule." He drew his blade, and it hummed with deadly energy. "I'll do what you cannot." Vorthani's faced an impossible choice, and Rachel realized that everything was about to fall apart. The storage room went dead silent except for Shimmer's frightened whimpering. 50 Imperial guards surrounded the diner, their weapons glowing with enough energy to level the entire city block. General Cross stood with his blade raised, pointed directly at the baby dragon hiding behind Rachel's legs. Rachel's hands shook as she gripped the coffee pot, but she didn't move. She'd seen enough in her life to know when someone was serious about violence, and Cross was deadly serious. But she'd also watched her father fight his own body for 2 years, refusing to give up even when the doctors said it was hopeless. If he could fight that hard, she could stand her ground now. "You want to kill a baby?" Rachel's voice came out steadier than she felt. "That's your solution? Murder a child who's done nothing wrong except be born different." "It's not murder," Cross said coldly. "It's mercy. The hatchling will suffer her entire life. Better to end it quickly than let her live in shame. That's garbage and you know it." Rachel took a step forward, still holding the coffee pot like a weapon. She was terrified, but she was also angry. Furious at this entire twisted system. Shimmer's been working her tail off for 3 weeks. She's learned to extend her wing, to coordinate her movements, to fly. She's braver than half the soldiers standing outside. "She's defective," Cross snapped. In dragon culture, physical weakness cannot be tolerated. It's been our law for 10,000 years. Then your law is wrong. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Several guards shifted uncomfortably. Vorthanes looked at Rachel with something like awe. Nobody spoke to General Cross like that. Nobody questioned dragon law. Not even the Emperor. Cross advanced on Rachel and Vorthanes moved to intercept. The two dragons faced each other and Rachel could feel the temperature in the room spike. Cross had been Vorthanes' most loyal commander for over 2 centuries. They'd fought side by side in dozens of wars. They were brothers in every way that mattered. "Don't make me kill you," Vorthanes said quietly. "Don't make me watch you destroy everything we built," Cross replied. "You're not thinking clearly. This human has twisted your judgment. You're risking civil war over a defective hatchling. She's my daughter. She's a liability." Cross's voice cracked. "If you return to the homeworld with her, the military council will demand your abdication. Vexenar already has half the fleet on his side. He's arguing that your bloodline is corrupted, that you're too weak to lead. Bringing her back proves him right." Rachel had been watching this exchange, her mind racing. She thought about her father's care facility, how the administrators kept suggesting it would be kinder to remove his feeding tube. How they'd looked at him like he was already dead, like his life had stopped mattering the moment his body stopped cooperating. She'd fought them for 2 years, and even though she'd lost him anyway, she'd never regretted giving him those extra years of dignity. "You know what I think?" Rachel said, and both dragons turned to look at her. "I think you're all terrified." "Excuse me?" Cross looked offended. "You've built this whole empire on being perfect, on being the strongest and the toughest and never showing weakness. But that's exhausting, isn't it? Having to pretend you never hurt, never struggle, never need help?" Rachel gestured to the guards outside. "How many of them are hiding injuries right now? How many have scars they're ashamed of? How many lost someone they loved because your stupid law said they weren't worth saving?" She saw several guards look away. Saw something flicker across Cross's face. "My dad had a stroke," Rachel continued. "Afterward he couldn't walk. Couldn't talk. Couldn't feed himself. By your logic, his life wasn't worth living anymore. But you know what? He learned to walk again. Took him 8 months and it was the hardest thing he ever did, but he walked. He relearned how to say my name. He fed himself even though his hands shook so bad he spilled half his food." Her voice broke but she pushed through. "He was stronger after the stroke than before it because he had to fight for every single tiny thing. And you would have killed him. Called it mercy. Thrown away someone incredible because he didn't meet your standards of perfection." Vorthanes was staring at her. So was Cross. The entire room seemed frozen. "Your empire is scared of disabled people because they prove something you don't want to admit," Rachel said. "That strength isn't about dominating others. It's about surviving when everything's against you. It's about getting up every day and trying even when your own body fights you. Shimmer is stronger than any of you and you can't stand it." Cross's weapon lowered slightly. "You don't understand our culture. Our history." "I understand that you're about to kill a baby to avoid looking weak," Rachel shot back. "I understand that your emperor is willing to give up his throne rather than murder his own child, and somehow you think that makes him unfit to lead." She turned to Vorthanes. Tell them what you decided." Vorthanes looked at his oldest friend, at his loyal guards, at the empire he'd bled for. Then he looked at his daughter, still trembling behind Rachel, and his choice became clear. He removed his imperial insignia, the glowing crystal that marked him as emperor, and set it on the floor at Shimmer's feet. The gesture sent shockwaves through every dragon present. An emperor removing his insignia was unheard of. It meant abdication. Surrender. "If my throne requires my daughter's death," Vorthanes said clearly, "then I don't want it." Cross actually stumbled backward. "My lord, you can't. The empire will fracture. There will be civil war. Millions will die." "Then let it burn," Vorthanes said. "I won't lead an empire that demands I sacrifice my child to maintain it. I won't perpetuate a system built on discarding anyone who doesn't fit a narrow definition of acceptable." He stood tall, and Rachel saw the true emperor emerge. Not the warrior who'd conquered his way to power, but the father who'd crossed galaxies to save his daughter. "This human has nothing," Vorthanes continued, gesturing to Rachel. "She faces homelessness, poverty, a future of struggle. Yet she gave everything for Shimmer without hesitation, without expectation of reward. She showed me what real power looks like, what real strength is." Cross stood frozen, his weapon hanging loose in his hand. For a long moment nobody moved. Then, slowly, the general's weapon clattered to the floor. His hands shook, and when he spoke, his voice was broken. "My sister had a twisted jaw when she hatched," Cross said quietly. "Just a small deformity. It didn't affect her ability to eat or speak, but it was visible. My father killed her himself when she was 3 days old. Said it was his duty." Rachel watched tears run down the general's scaled face. "I've enforced these laws for 300 years, Cross continued. "I've killed hatchlings, ordered executions, maintained the standards. And I've hated every single moment. I told myself it was necessary. That it was mercy. That it protected the Empire." He looked at Shimmer, really looked at her. "But it's not mercy, is it? It's fear. We're so terrified of appearing weak that we destroy our own children." Vorthanes placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Then help me change it. If we return with Shimmer, Vexenar will demand trial by combat," Cross warned. "The military council will side with him. You'll be fighting half the Empire. Then we fight." Vorthanes looked at Rachel. "But this time we fight for something worth dying for. We bring Shimmer. We bring Rachel. And we show them that strength isn't dominance. It's compassion." Rachel's stomach dropped. "Wait, what? You want me to go to your planet? I'm a waitress. I can barely handle Earth politics." "You faced down an Imperial general with a coffee pot," Vorthanes said gently. "You'll manage." Rachel had never been to space before. She'd barely been outside her home state. Now she stood in the Imperial arena on the Dragon homeworld, surrounded by 50,000 beings who could incinerate her with a single breath. The arena was carved from black volcanic glass that reflected flames from 1,000 torches, making it look like she was standing inside a giant furnace. She was absolutely terrified. Shimmer pressed against her leg, the baby dragon shaking just as hard as Rachel was. Vorthanes stood to her right, his face expressionless but his hand resting protectively on his daughter's head. General Cross stood to her left, and Rachel could see dozens of other guards forming a protective circle around them. Across the arena floor, Commander Vexenar waited. He was larger than Vorthanes, his scales a deep crimson that seemed to glow with inner fire. Behind him stood what looked like half the dragon military, all watching with hungry eyes. "You dare return with that abomination?" Vexenar's voice boomed across the arena, amplified somehow so everyone could hear. "You prove your weakness, Vorthanes. Your bloodline is corrupted. You're unfit to rule." The crowd roared in agreement, and Rachel felt Shimmer try to hide behind her legs. She knelt down and hugged the baby dragon, whispering reassurances even though her own heart was hammering. "Trial by combat," Vexenar declared, drawing a massive blade that crackled with energy. "Fight me and prove your strength, or surrender your throne and accept mercy, killing for your defective heir." Rachel watched Vorthanes' hand move toward his own weapon. This was it. They were going to fight to the death, and even if Vorthanes won, nothing would change. The system would continue. More disabled hatchlings would die. The cycle would repeat. She thought about her father, about the care facility administrators who'd treated him like a problem to solve rather than a person to help. She thought about every time someone had looked at her with pity when she mentioned being a waitress, like her life was somehow less valuable because she served coffee instead of having a fancy career. She thought about Shimmer, who'd worked harder than anyone Rachel had ever known, who'd endured pain and fear and kept trying anyway. Before Vorthanes could draw his weapon, Rachel stepped forward. "I invoke human diplomatic protocol." Her voice came out shaky but loud enough to carry. "I demand the right to speak before this trial begins." The arena erupted in laughter. Dragons roared with amusement at the tiny human who thought she had any authority here. Vexenar looked at her like she was an amusing insect. "Let the pet speak," he said with a cruel smile. "It'll be entertaining before we end this farce." Rachel's legs felt like jelly, but she walked to the center of the arena. General Cross had given her a small device that would project her voice and images to the entire crowd. She activated it with trembling fingers. "You want to know what I see when I look at Shimmer?" Rachel said, and her voice echoed off the glass walls. "I see a baby who's endured more pain than most of your warriors will face in their entire lives. I see someone who's worked every single day to overcome what all of you called impossible." She pulled out her phone and connected it to the projection device. Images from Earth filled the arena, massive holograms that showed Paralympic athletes racing in wheelchairs, running on prosthetic legs, swimming with missing limbs. "You call this weakness," Rachel said, pointing to an image of a one-legged runner crossing a finish line. "We call it courage." More images. A blind musician playing piano. A deaf dancer moving to vibrations instead of sound. A child with cerebral palsy learning to walk with braces and determination that brought tears to Rachel's eyes every time she watched the video. You see people who don't meet your standards, so you throw them away, Rachel continued. We see people with different abilities and we build ramps and tools and support systems. We adapt our world to include everyone, not force everyone to fit one narrow definition of acceptable. She saw some dragons in the crowd shifting uncomfortably. She wanted them uncomfortable. The strongest person I ever knew was my father, Rachel said, and her voice cracked. He had a stroke when I was 20. Afterward, he couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't feed himself. The doctors said he'd never improve, that we should just make him comfortable and wait for the end. Images of her father filled the arena. Before the stroke, laughing at a barbecue. After the stroke, struggling through physical therapy with a determination that had amazed his nurses. He proved them wrong. It took 8 months, but he learned to walk again. Relearned how to say my name. Fed himself even though his hands shook so badly he spilled half his food. Tears ran down Rachel's face, but she didn't wipe them away. By your laws, he should have been killed the day he had that stroke. You would have called it mercy. She turned to face Vexenaar directly. But living with disability isn't a fate worse than death. It's just life. Different, challenging, requiring adaptation, but still worth living. Rachel activated another hologram, this one showing Shimmer's therapy sessions. The baby dragon struggling through her first wing stretches, whimpering in pain but refusing to quit. Slowly achieving more extension. Finally, gloriously achieving coordinated flight. The arena went completely silent as they watched Shimmer fly. Her movement was awkward, asymmetrical, nothing like a normal dragon's flight. But she flew. Your advanced medicine said this was impossible, Rachel said. A human waitress with second-hand textbooks and gentle hands made it happen. You know why? Because I didn't see a defect to fix. I saw a person who needed help. Vorthani stepped forward then, addressing the crowd directly. I built my reign on the same principles you all believe. Strength through dominance. Perfection through elimination. But I was wrong. We've all been wrong. He gestured to the images still playing of Shimmer's progress. We've created a culture where showing vulnerability means death, where needing help equals failure, where being different is unforgivable. And we call this strength. Cross moved to stand beside the Emperor, and Rachel saw shock ripple through the crowd. The general's voice was steady but filled with old pain. I lost my sister to these laws, Cross announced. A small jaw deformity. She was 3 days old. My father killed her because tradition demanded it. He looked around at the assembled dragons. How many of you carry similar stories? How many have lost children, siblings, friends to our standards of perfection? For a moment nothing happened. Then a dragon in the crowd stood up. Then another. Then dozens. Hundreds. Each one standing in silent testimony to loved ones lost, scars hidden, pain endured in secret because showing weakness meant death. Vexenaar looked around in growing panic as his support crumbled. This is heresy. The law is clear. Weakness cannot be tolerated. She's not weak. The voice was small but fierce. Shimmer stepped away from Rachel, her wings spread wide, one perfect and one twisted. I'm different. Not broken. The baby dragon launched herself into flight before 50,000 witnesses. She wobbled badly, her path erratic and strange. She'd never fly like normal dragons, would always struggle with things that came naturally to others. But she flew. And she was beautiful. Rachel watched with tears streaming down her face as Shimmer completed a full circuit of the arena, landing gracefully beside her. The baby dragon looked up at Vexenaar with absolute confidence. I worked harder than you've ever worked, Shimmer said. I hurt more than you've ever hurt. I earned these wings. You were just born with yours. The vote was called immediately. The military council chose to preserve Vorthani's rule by an overwhelming majority. More than that, they voted to begin immediate cultural reform. To study human approaches to disability and difference. To build an empire where compassion mattered as much as conquest. Vexenaar left in disgrace, and Rachel felt like she could finally breathe. 3 days later, Rachel stood in the imperial palace preparing to return to Earth. Vorthani's offered her wealth beyond imagination, a position as ambassador, citizenship with full honors. She turned it all down. I've got a diner to save, she said with a tired smile. And my boss will absolutely kill me if I miss another shift. But she accepted one thing, a communication device small enough to wear as a bracelet, so she could call Shimmer anytime. The journey back to Earth felt like a dream. When Rachel walked into her apartment, she found an official-looking notice on her door. Her heart sank, expecting another eviction threat. Instead, it informed her that her building had been purchased by an anonymous benefactor. Her rent was paid in full, permanently. A separate envelope contained payment for all her father's outstanding medical bills, marked as settled. A note in dragon script simply read, "Every debt must be balanced." Rachel sat on her cheap couch and cried, but this time from relief. 3 months later, she was pouring coffee at 2 in the morning when her bracelet buzzed. Shimmer's face appeared in hologram, and the dragon was twice as large now, grinning with pride. "Rachel, you have to see this." The image shifted to show a massive building under construction. "We're building a therapy center. 4 dragons with disabilities. Using your techniques. Because of you, hundreds of hatchlings who would have been killed are getting help instead." Rachel's hand shook as she held the bracelet. "Shimmer, that's incredible. You changed everything," Shimmer said softly. "You proved that different doesn't mean broken. Thank you." After the call ended, Rachel stood alone in the empty diner. Outside, the neon sign still flickered. The coffee was still cheap. Her feet still ached. But somewhere in the universe, an empire was learning that the strongest thing wasn't power or dominance or perfection. It was choosing to help someone who needed it, expecting nothing in return except the chance to make their life a little bit better. Rachel smiled, poured herself a cup of terrible coffee and got back to work. Because that's what humans do.